Hey everybody, spoilers for No Time to Die and all the Daniel Craig Bond films. In fact, spoilers for all Bond films. So, fair warning. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Script Department. I'm John. I'm joined today by Marcus and Asim. We're going to be talking with me about all the Bond films, the Daniel Craig movies, and where the Bond franchise could go next. But before that, if you haven't already, do check out our website, thescriptdepartment.net, where you can find all the latest projects that we're up to, including script readings from our wider global network of screenwriters. You can also find us on social media. Check out the links in the description. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on all major podcasting platforms. Just search for The Script Department and do subscribe and like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well if you haven't. So, Marcus, Asim, let's talk about James Bond. I'm a huge Bond fan, so really excited to kind of get stuck into this. Marcus, talk to me about your experience or your interest in the Bond franchise, and have you seen all the movies, or where are you coming from?
I'm quite far from being a Bond expert. I am a far from a newcomer, but my Bond was always Pierce Brosnan. I remember him in you see, now this is where my knowledge level is going to start coming out, because I'm struggling over names of things immediately. Madonna's film. You remember Madonna's Bond film.
Die Another Day.
Die Another Day. There we go. Thanks for that. Yeah, I remember that one. That was kind of my main introduction to Bond when I was a little bit younger, and so I came into it with not exactly a sour taste, but not a entirely positive taste, because of the nature of some of those elements, and I thought it was a bit campy and everything. But then immediately afterward came Casino Royale, and I fell in love. And so my Bond my Bond is very much Daniel Craig, and I love kind of what's happened with that, and the direction they've taken that in. So that's my main experience of Bond up to this point, I would say.
Asim, where are you coming from with all this?
I will say I'm similar to Marcus. Die Another Day would be my first kind of introduction. I went actually to the Bond thing because of the cars. I'm a big fan cars, and especially this is the first time they actually introduced the Jaguar XK with the evil guy.
Ooh, yeah.
In a very great green color. And I love the fact that they actually introduced the Aston Martin in cars. So that's my kind of way to get into the movies. As a concept and story, it was really interesting, at that time. But I'm also with the Marks in terms of Daniel Craig. Becomes much more the real Bond that we want in this time and age. I think that's where actually I feel more bondish with him. And let's say it's gonna be very sad to see Daniel Craig go. He did a really amazing job with this 5 movies.
Yeah, he really did. I mean, there's a beautiful moment where Graham Norton is interviewing Daniel Craig, and he, at the end of the interview on his show, he does say, "You were a phenomenal Bond. You were a tremendous Bond," or something like that. And he just gets this wonderful applause from the audience that like normal guests don't get.
He nailed it.
You can really tell that there was something, that there was some connection there with audiences and what Daniel Craig brought to the table. And maybe it's Daniel Craig as an actor that people really love him as an actor, but you didn't get that with other Bond movies. These are really, for the most part, pretty special, and I dare say pretty perfect movies to a degree. They're not all perfect, they've got their issues, but in terms of what they're offering and what you're asking audiences to kind of swallow and digest, and process, they can't get much better, I think, than that. And they do have a lot of work ahead of them in terms of where this franchise could go next.
I would agree. I think Daniel Craig humanized Bond. Suddenly he's not exactly the kind of bloke you'd meet down the pub, but he's a real person, and he's an individual that you feel like you could meet and would probably be, both charmed by and terrified of. But he feels like a real individual now. Whereas, looking back at the symbol of Bond in the past, and perhaps I get into trouble with you there, John, for saying such things. But I feel as though the symbol of what it is to be Bond before Craig. I just don't. It's just not. It doesn't feel like a character as much as an idea. And I think what Daniel Craig does there is really brings him into the here and now, which I think is a really impressive achievement.
Yes, I think when you see these 5 movies, you will see the arc of his character changing. And for me, as I love characters and I love how they actually develop through the stories, we can see that his humanity is becoming more and more. I think the one time he lost his real self is when M was died. This is where his emotions came out. He was struggling, to get out these emotions, and now he's getting them out. And if you compare him with the other Bonds before, I think the other Bonds are more A.M. Fleming kind of way of writing his novel. These are much more screenwriting techniques that we actually use, in the scripts, and that helped a lot and to develop that character and to be more humanized, more believable, and attach ourselves to it.
Yeah, no, it is very true. It's what you say is very true. The idea that these are screenwriters' movies. These are screenwriters' characters, I think.
Yes.
Whereas I always felt the other Bond films were producers' movies. In the sense or production designers' movies. Great costumes, great set pieces, great music, great synergy with marketing and all that. And Barbara Broccoli is a fantastic producer, and Cubby Broccoli before her. They know how to package and they know how to market this character, but it always does feel that it's about the set. It's about the suave suits. It's about the ideas, as you said, Marcus, where this is what masculinity is in this period. This is what masculinity is in this period, etc., etc. And Asim, what you're then talking about is what Daniel Craig's movies brought to the table was characterization. The sets are there in response to the characters. The plot, the villain schemes and all that kind of stuff are tied into characterization. And they get convoluted from time to time. I do think we'll get into it, but it is always grounded in character and Daniel Craig's character that he created, and I love that. My own interest in Bond is always like I've always said James Bond is the series of films that made me want to watch movies. Growing up, I always found it strange when some of my friends didn't actually like watching movies. I do think watching movies is something you have to kind of train your mind to do when you're young. I've had family members who, could watch hours and hours of television, but they didn't have the attention span for movies. And I think Bond is because I used to watch Bond every week. There used to always be a Bond marathon on some channel on television. Every Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever, there'd be a movie on, and it would start with Dr. No and it would end at GoldenEye or whatever the latest movie was at that time. And I always remember just it being just this routine every year, rewatching the Bond movies. I've always loved him, and I always had this. Was an uncle of mine who passed away about 2 years ago or so, and he had kind of inducted me into the Bond world, introduced me into the Bond world, where he always had the books and all that kind of stuff, and he knew everything about Bond, and so I was watching Bond with this guy who knew everything, and it was really special for me to watch No Time to Die, because he never got to see that film, but for me it was this really, I knew he would have loved that film because there was so much love that went into making that film. The filmmakers just nailed it, I think, in terms of capturing the essence. Whether you like the ending or not, and we can get into that again.
Sure.
I just thought they really nailed the tone of that movie. And if you are a Bond historian, like like to fancy myself as. That film is oozing with references. Like you wouldn't believe, and it's so amazing.
It's a proper love letter to
it is
to what's come before us, and what I love about that is that whilst I am not as kind of au fait with it as you are, it's a love letter both to Bond as a historical franchise and as going back for however many years, 60 years now, I think it is, something like that, and but also a love letter to Daniel Craig's interpretation as well, and the conclusion of this quite groundbreaking serialized storytelling that has happened within Bond, and that they just decided to do, with Casino Royale, or probably actually more accurately with Quantum of Solace, the idea that they're just like, yeah, we're going to tell a story. We're going to tell a story across films. Whereas, and please correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I don't think they've done that before. I think they kind of been standalone,
no.
perhaps. Yeah, but they are so interwoven, and to the point where by the time you get to No Time to Die, I think you certainly have to be, I think anyway, at least familiar with Casino Royale, if not, other elements, and that's potentially a quibble of mine, but it's not. But not really. It's. Yeah, it's just so cool. It's just so cool to see Bond telling a story over time and to come back around to that character, to give that character the chance to grow. You start with him, that amazing opening scene of Casino Royale in black and white, and you see M then say, you're too young to be a 00, and then by Skyfall he's aging, and by No Time to Die he's aged out. And it's that wonderful, literally is replaced with a younger model, and it's so wonderful to see that character again humanized in that way, but explored to that extent in a contemporary setting. I just think it's a truly courageous thing to do.
Exactly. I mean, if you take since 2006 Casino Royale, like until now, it's been 15 years with Daniel Craig. So I think it's very fitting when you see the transition of him becoming from a newbie to becoming much more professional, then almost retiring by the end of No Time to Die. It's like even reflecting his real life. So that actually gave him so much about, how to develop that character and how to live it. When he came in the first time, he was really fresh, now he's much more mature than in Skyfall maybe. And then now he's much more, okay, I'm really happy with the 5 films. This is my last note, and I'm really happy to do it. And this is for the fans. And I think I actually side with you in terms of it's a love letter. And there's a lot of notes when you see them in No Time to Die reflect as a reference to these 4 movies before that. So
yeah,
and it is it's funny that at no point does it ever feel like he's outstayed his welcome in this story.
No.
We were talking about the Matrix Resurrections and how we couldn't find the rationale behind this film. Like, we couldn't find this movie, the reason for why this story should exist other than let's make money.
Yes.
And no movie, Bond movies make a hell of a lot of money. For sure. At no point did I ever feel watching these films that this is just a cash grab. This is just, well, we got to make a new Bond movie because we need to pay the bills. It's no, there was a legitimate chapter in this story. And at no point did it ever foreshadow where this was going to go. Like, there are plenty of movies where where you are in the lifespan of this character. Where you are within the life of this journey, of this story. And this character, the movies never ever made you feel like, okay, we're coming to the end of this journey now, or this is the end of Act 2 of this story. It never felt like that at all for me. The twists along the way, or the surprise deaths or whatever, would always just felt we're just living in the moment here with this character, and yeah, it's just pure character. I love it. Yeah,
we can talk spoilers, can't we? We don't need to.
Spoiler warning for the whole. Yeah, no,
because because the death of Felix absolutely cut me to my very heart. You know that,
Yep.
and again, and that's kind of what I mean by the really essential film for. I think you could conceivably watch Casino Royale and then watch No Time to Die, and see them as a direct sequel, and I think that works because they bookend this time, and obviously the more you see, the better. But you know, I think it does kind of work in that way, and to see, you know, this character, I don't know what it is about him. I just really connected with Felix as a. I think he's because he's a different kind of agent, and he's a different kind of, you know, kind of spy from a different world to Bond. And you know, again, you get these. Not again, I haven't said it yet. You get this kind of reflection of modern geopolitics in the Bond films, and they've done that so cleverly throughout this time. And so to kind of see the American version of Bond and the way they kind of react to each other with the special relationship, and then that special relationship strained, and then to see him, you know, man, it just broke me when he died. Actual
But
tears.
Bond,
I cried as well.
I completely agree. Bond, see, if you go back right to the very beginning, Felix Leiter has been in Doctor No. He's been in countless other films. He's always played it. I don't think it's a coincidence that he's always played a great role in many of my favorite Bond films. He's always been my favorite character in the Bond universe. And if you've ever seen License to Kill, the Timothy Dalton film, that's one of my favorite ones. That is a revenge movie. Where have you seen that one, Marcus?
Many years ago, not properly for a
while. So the plot of License to Kill is that Timothy Dalton's Bond is attending Felix's wedding, and before the wedding, Felix arrests a cartel boss and locks him up. The cartel boss escapes, and they kill Felix's wife, and they feed Felix to a shark, and Felix loses his leg. And it's pretty dark. It's pretty twisted. It's definitely the darkest Bond movie. And Bond hands in his license to kill because M doesn't want him going on a revenge mission. And he says, well, I'm just going to do it myself. And he goes rogue, and he... and it, you know, in many ways, this was the last Timothy Dalton film. He only did 2, but this was the last one. And it's interesting because it's got a happy ending to it, but he never rejoins. I don't believe, I may be wrong, but I don't think he rejoins, or he explicitly states that he's back in the service again at the end of that film. But anyway, he goes on this quest where he goes undercover in South America with this cartel boss. And so it's a bit cheesy, but it works brilliantly. As a wedding gift to Bond, because Bond is the best man, at the wedding, Felix gives him a Felix lighter, like a literal light, a silver cigarette lighter that has like an inscription on it, and Bond pockets it. And there's a reference to Felix's wife says something like he makes a joke. He makes a joke of now it's your turn to get married, and Bond kind of said, no, and he walks away, and she's like, oh, what did I say? And Felix goes, he was married once, it was a long time ago. And that's a kind of a subtle reference. So then when Felix's wife gets killed, there's so much energy there, there's so much kind of loaded power there with I'm sick of us losing our loved ones, you know. There's so much underlying venom in that moment where he sees the woman dead, and he finds Felix is still moving. He's like, you know, he's kind of wrapped in plastic and there's blood everywhere. And he's still like, he just moves ever so slightly. And it's like, it's almost like he's getting revenge for the people who took his wife, you know?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful kind of story. And the end of the film has a big truck chase between him and Sanchez, the cartel boss. And they're driving these like fuel trucks. And it's like very contrived how they get into these fuel trucks, but they're like this cool chase, and then it ends in this like horrific crash, and there's just petrol flowing everywhere, and Sanchez is covered in petrol, and Bond is just like half unconscious on the ground, and Sanchez comes over with a machete, and Bond, and like he's like, any last words or something to that effect, and Bond just takes out a lighter takes out the lighter, and he says something like "from Felix," and then he lights him on fire, and it is the greatest villain death in ever in any movie I've ever seen. Like, I mean, to me, this trumps the snap in Endgame. You know, like in the death of villain. It is so powerful, and it's a pun. It's the whole thing is based on a pun.
Yeah.
This is a Felix lighter. You know, and it's so great, and it's also great. Building on a joke that happened in like one of the earlier films where somebody says, "Have you got?" Bond says to Felix, "Have you got a light?" And he pulls out a lighter, and he goes, "Oh, look at that, a genuine Felix lighter," you know. And so they've made that joke before, and it's just the perfect payoff to this, and it's so masterful. And this is, sorry, I'm getting back to your point there about how great Felix is. The moment in No Time to Die, when the guy under the car, the guy who basically betrayed Felix and caused Felix to die, he's trapped under a Land Rover or something in the best way ever, and the Land Rover is kind of slowly crushing him a little bit, and he goes, Bond, you know, and he says, brother, help me, you know, or something like that.
Yeah.
He says brother like in a slang way, like, hey brother, how you doing, you know, that kind of thing. And he says, brother, help me. And then Bond goes, I had a brother. And you think he's going to say Blofeld, because Blofeld is his brother in this timeline. And he says, I had a brother, but his name was Felix. And his name was Felix.
Yeah.
And then he just pushes the Land Rover on top of the guy, and you just hear the scream and the crushing and all that. And it's magnificent. That to me is the best line in the whole Daniel Craig franchise. Because the first thing Felix says to Daniel Craig in Casino Royale is, I'm your brother from Langley. Which is just
correct.
Which is a cool line, right?
Yeah.
I'm your brother from Langley. And Felix is the kind of guy who speaks in slang. He's not going to say, I'm your opposite number. He's going to say, I'm your brother from Langley. And then Bond says, I had a brother, and his name was Felix. And it's just the greatest bookend. Even now, I'm just like the hair on my arm stands up thinking about that line. It is masterful. So I love that character, Felix. I think he's amazing. I thought that's the power of these movies. You know, if you're a fan of Bond, if you've been following that 50-year lineage, this franchise and what Cary Fukunaga did in this movie is just, and that's all I've got to say.
You're gonna chef's kiss that. You're gonna chef's kiss it. I love it.
So let's do a deep dive into these movies, the strengths, the weaknesses. What's your favorite Daniel Craig movie? And we're going to build a foundation here, and we'll then talk about where they can go with this. So what's your favorite Daniel Craig movie, Asim?
For now, I think Casino Royale, because it's kind of the new introduction to the new Bond, and also how we see Daniel Craig in a very different perspective than we usually see. You know, the very handsome guy. This is he's much more robust. He's much more, I don't say he's not handsome, but he's much more the normal, typical guy. In the past, they were more focused on the tall guys, the very handsome ones, you know, the slick hair. This one is just very going into the, you know, he's more like a gangster, and I like him.
He's like rugby player.
Yeah.
Isn't he? Like, he's had his nose broken a few times.
He's not rich in this movie, in Casino Royale.
Yes.
He's rich in, you can tell he's well off. You know, he comes from wealth in Skyfall. Obviously, we see that. You can tell, you know, in Spectre, he's very much, you can tell he's got money. The same in No Time to Die. You know, you can see the kind of the lifestyle that this world, this job has afforded him. Casino Royale, is very much, it feels like, he's not struggling financially, but he's not rich, you know. I like that. There's a nice balance there. He's not spoiled with Tom Ford suits or anything like that.
Exactly. I mean, I like also the mistakes that he do in Casino Royale more than any of the other franchise. If you notice that every step he takes, it's a dangerous one, and it's always backlashing on him. It's always backfiring at him, and I like that because it actually shows also his character and how he actually. How can we see his martial arts and also his fighting skills and all that is by making mistakes, and that's one of the best things. And the first time we see Bond getting having all the blood, and it shows with him, and he's still having his agony through the movie, and I like that.
He also is a really, I think that film showed a nice collage of different Bond characters. I've always said Sean Connery is he's the boxer of the group. Bond was a boxer, if I'm not mistaken, in the story. In his backstory, he was like a champion boxer in the Navy. And you sense that, you can see that, Sean Connery was a Mr. Universe contestant. He came second or first, I'm not too sure, but he was, world, he was well built, and you kind of got that impression in terms of the fighting style and things like that in those movies. Roger Moore is very much the witty guy. He's the comedian of the group. Timothy Dalton is the angry man in the group. If Bond has a temper, it comes out in those films. And Bond, the it's almost like Timothy Dalton's version. I love Timothy Dalton's version, but it's very much he's a man on a mission. He will not be deterred. He's focused. Yeah, there's a kind of a laser focus there. He's not going to be distracted. He doesn't have time for distractions or anything like that. And the Pierce Brosnan movies were, I think, an attempt to bring some of those components together, but it was very much, I think he was like I don't know how to describe it. It was almost like the precursor to Daniel Craig more than a successor to the other ones, if that makes sense. He was definitely one of the best. I really loved him in that. But that's the thing I loved about Casino Royale, actually, and what you say, Asim, is that it felt like the patchwork quilt of all of the Bond. Like, you will find, if you love previous Bond films, you will find something you love in Casino Royale. And Marcus, where do you sit?
Well, I think you've just talked me around to Casino Royale, to be honest. But for the sake of diversity, I would say Skyfall for me just nails it. It's because it was a special film. It was the 50th anniversary of Bond, and obviously saw the death of Judi Dench's M. And I don't know that I'll ever forgive them for the way they killed her off, because it was so it was just brutal. And but it was just a brilliant film, and I think it's very accessible as well as a Bond film. I think it's one of those, and I think quite deliberately so, because of the nature of when it was made and what it was made for. I think that I enjoyed delving into Bond's background, and I liked the return to Scotland, and and that was a lovely nod as well, I felt, to and I would read that as a nod to Sean Connery. Whether it's meant as that or not, I don't know, but it's it kind of feels that way to me.
I've never made that connection, and I love
really?
the film even more now because you just said that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's always the way I read that.
Connection. I never made that connection, and it makes total sense now. Sorry, continue. Yeah.
No, it's fine. I wondered if perhaps he was Scottish in the books or something like that, but no, that's always the way I've read that. Is that that's a nod to Sean Connery, and honestly, I expected when I was watching it and I forget the character's name, but the caretaker of the mansion or whatever, when he turned around, I expected it to be Sean Connery. I expected it to be like him, doing a like in Doctor Who. They did the same time, very nearly the same time. They did
Kincaid is his name. Kincaid.
That's it, Kincaid. Thank you. Tom Baker had a lovely cameo in the 50th anniversary episode, and I thought it was going to be a really similar thing, but I'll forgive them. I'll move on eventually. but I love that. I love the exploration of the past, and I love I love the stripping away of technology, and I think it's a criticism that's been leveled at that film, but I actually think it's a real strength. Is the I saw it written in a review. Bond becomes Home Alone, and they start setting up these traps and everything like that. But I think it's really cool. I love that. I think it's such an interesting way to take that character who usually is. And of course, they went a different direction with Craig's Bond anyway. They kind of stripped back the campy gadgets and stuff, but they really did it there. And it is just a man in a past that's haunting him, trying to protect his mother figure, alongside his potential father figure, though not whatever. And I think there's something so pure about that, and I think there's something so lovely about that. And it's also a very well structured film. I think the structure of it is very strong. It's very clear. It is, and you also get Judi Dench's commentary on the state of the service and the state and what it means to be Bond in the here and now. It's a very deliberate movie, and it feels very controlled. And I believe it was Danny Boyle directed that one.
No, Sam Mendes.
Sam Mendes, thank you. Idiot, thanks.
Danny Boyle was going to direct No Time to Die, and then he pulled out because of creative differences. I think he wanted his own screenwriter in, and they have their own way of doing things. So Kerry Fukunaga came in, and I think Danny Boyle would have definitely made a hell of a job of that film. But I love the guy I love that the guy who did True Detective made this.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. But no, that for me is I think it does so much and it ties so much together. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong there, Bond connoisseur, but it feels as though it references and ties things together in a very neat package.
Skyfall blew me away in the cinema. It was the 50th anniversary. They made a big song and dance at the beginning. They had the whole 50 years of Bond kind of trailer at the beginning, and it was like and I saw it on the opening day, first screening in Cork. I'll never forget it. As a lifelong Bond fan, that was a really special moment in the cinema to see that.
Yeah,
I felt like I was in the cinema watching something special, and I definitely came away feeling like, holy crap, I need to watch that movie again. That was amazing. Now, this is a film that it's my favorite film as well of that franchise. Oh. I also think it's the best Bond movie across the board. However, I don't believe it's a perfect movie because all the Bond films have issues, plot holes and things like that. This film has serious plot holes that make zero sense. However, I think the overall storytelling and the overall character journey and the way it's made, the way it's filmed and edited, the music and the action and just everything is so good, and Sam Mendes does such an amazing job with it that I can forgive all those plot holes. So the big plot hole in this is you've got this guy De Silva who's trying to torment M so that he can get himself captured, so he can then plant a virus in MI6 and then escape and then kill. So he's contrived all of these events so that he can then assassinate M.
Yeah. And then there's the tube that comes through the ceiling, isn't it, that he needed to have planted months later, yeah.
He's chased by Bond, and then he leads Bond down into this room, and he's got it all timed so that a tube train comes crashing through the roof, which none of it makes a shred of sense. He allows Bond to capture him. And the problem here is, right, that there's one line in this movie, and if they cut that line from the movie, the whole movie would make perfect sense. So there's a moment where Q is like, his like laptop starts flashing or something like that, and he realizes that, De Silva has is it De Silva or Silva? Wait, I've got it.
It's Silva, I think. I've
literally Silva.
Just looked it up now.
Silva.
Raul Silva, yeah.
So Silva has like planted a virus in his computer or something like that, and Q says this was his plan all along, right? Or he planned this or something like that, and then that immediately just makes the whole thing nonsensical. Whereas if he didn't say that line, then you could just say, okay, he got caught by Bond, and then he improvised. His team improvised and busted him out and planted a virus, but he was able to plant a virus before anyway, so now he's planting another virus to, fuck with them. And you could figure, they're just adapting, and he's like, okay, where's M? I think she's at a panel hearing or something. Okay, an inquest hearing. I'm gonna go there, and that's where I'm gonna kill her. You could. And the reason he fails is because he's adapting. He's adapting as he's going. This isn't his plan. He never intended to get caught in the first place. But that one line of dialogue just complicates the whole thing to the point where it doesn't actually make sense. So you have to just kind of pretend you didn't hear that line and just go with it. And because I don't believe that the screenwriters were so stupid that they couldn't see that the whole plot didn't make sense. Like the whole plot. Yeah. So what I think is far more likely is the screenwriters missed the fact that one line of dialogue undermined the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's more likely. I think it explains why someone as talented as Sam Mendes, somebody as invested as Daniel Craig and all that kind of stuff, couldn't catch this. Couldn't catch that was an issue. And
Yeah, just on the one note on Skyfall, because I know we're not really here to talk about Skyfall, but I've got all over excited. Ben Whishaw as Q in an introduction there is just
incredible,
spot on. And that wonderful sequence where they talk about control of a screen in terms of acting and direction and writing, actually, and things coalescing when they're sat in the museum looking at the picture of the ship. I forget the name of the painting, but the painting of the ship, and they're making those comparisons, and Bond doesn't realize it's Q, and you have the old dog and the new the new upstart and everything like that. It's so perfect, and I could watch that scene on repeat, and I have done before, because it just works so perfectly. And I think there's a lot to be said for casting in that particular film, as well as others from there.
The casting is spot on in that film. I'm glad you mentioned Skyfall, because what Skyfall does really well is it starts and Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace didn't do this. Skyfall starts a trend within the next few movies of being self-referential to the past in a way that is not just tokenistic, but actually really, really smart. We see it with the introduction of the reintroduction of the Aston Martin. The reintroduction of the Aston Martin, which Asim, you must have been really excited about. And they use that car so well, because M is going to die later in this movie. The real victim in this movie is the Aston Martin when it gets blown up.
Oh,
and they use it to provoke the bear. Like you're kind of like, run for the hills, guys, because now you've pissed him off. You blew up his home. You killed his girlfriend a few years back, or I know he didn't, Silva didn't, but people have been pissing this guy off over the years, and it's like no, now you've ruined it. And they cue the music so perfectly as well. It's like da da, they cue it everything, and I remember just being brilliant. This is masterful, like, storytelling. They know how to use Bond's history and our history with the franchise to tell the story. I thought it was so great. And then they continue that into, and we can kind of move away from Skyfall. And they bring in Moneypenny, who's brilliantly used in this film. And then they introduce Mallory, the new M. And what's brilliant is that the set, the office, M's new office in this, because they blew up MI6 and now they've got a new, they need a new office for him and all that. M's new office is a real kind of a throwback to the original M's office. So they're beginning to create bridges to the past here, and then that gets carried over in Spectre when you've got literally Blofeld coming into it, and you've got a lot of the set pieces from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. You've got the Austrian Alps, the resort up in the clinic up in the Alps, and you've got the car being reintroduced at the end. It's now fixed again. They bring connections back to his family and Blofeld being his brother, which is a bit of a stretch, but fine.
Especially when you've just spent the preceding film talking about his life in Scotland, and you've seen all. I have to admit that that's a bridge too far for me on that one. I'm not a fan of that, but that's okay, you know.
It's something that comes into play in the film, doesn't really affect the way the story. It has really no influence on Bond or the way he perceives it. And in No Time to Die, it's barely referenced. So it's and in fact, going back to that whole Felix is my brother moment. It's almost like they're leaning more on Felix to kind of downplay the connection to Blofeld, I think, a little bit, you know, which I don't think undermines it, but also kind of salvages that whole kind of clumsiness a little bit. They got a bit too excited, I think, in the script, I think, on that point. But, you know, you've got the old set piece. Sorry?
You can, and maybe we can make this guy's brother, and that'd be so cool.
Yeah.
And I know what you mean.
I think they also try to do like Sherlock Holmes with his brother, you know, and try to do this kind of rivalry, you know, and just to spice up, you know, the script. I think you know, having just one villain is not enough to, you know, get people excited. But I think in these 5 films, they actually have a reduced number of technology to use if you compare them with the previous films, especially with the Brosnan one. I mean, that was just all gadget. I was looking at the films just with the gadget, you know, and so this one is just like with these new films, it's like they are barely giving him anything, and that's the beauty of it. They're trying to focus on his skills and his intelligence more than helping him with gadgets. The only thing that reminiscence from the past is the Aston Martin, you know, and how they use it as an homage to the old films as well.
Yeah, they do that really well, and it does makes Bond have to solve problems himself, or work as a team to solve a problem, which I think they do really well in these films as well. Is that there are recurring faces in these movies, more than just M and Q and Moneypenny. There are lots of recurring faces in this, and people who become part of the team, people who have a say and an advisory role in how the missions go about and stuff like that, which is really great. One point on Q, actually, one of the things I loved about Casino Royale was the failure of the gadgets. You know, so he's got the resuscitation device, and they're like, and I'm like, I think everybody in the audience watching it was like, when they saw the broken wires and all that kind of stuff in the defibrillator, I think everybody was just like, where's Q? And it's like this very unspoken kind of, we really need a Q branch here. And they don't kind of, I thought that was really smart, actually, the way they did that. And they by the time you get to No Time to Die, it's very, very self-referential. It's the same. So the death of Bond is very much foreshadowed in the "We have all the time in the world," which is the line from On Her Majesty's Secret Service when his wife dies. He says to his wife, "Darling, we have all the time in the world. There's no rush." And then she gets killed. A police officer comes to check on them. Are they okay? He doesn't realize what's happened, and Bond says, "Oh, she's sleeping. It's been a busy day because we just got married, and it's fine. We'll move on in a bit. We have all the time in the world." And they cue the music, and it's really kind of it's really effective. In this, it's the same music that they use at the end of this film, the same song. So that's the same from On Her Majesty's Service. But if I'm not mistaken, it's the same location and it's the same car. That scene of her driving away at the end, Madeline Swan driving away with her daughter and saying, "Let me tell you about a man. His name is Bond, James Bond," which I fucking loved. Sorry, like, I'm gonna have to put an explicit warning on this podcast, but that was just the best line for me. How do you end this? You use the words Bond, James Bond. Like, how do you fit that in convincingly? They did it. But if I'm not mistaken, it's the same car, and it's the same kind of, or at least it's designed to look like the same patch of road as well that she's driving on. It's the lengths they went to in this film to tie into the past is incredible. So one of my big hot takes on the Avengers Endgame, which sounds like a bit of a tangent here, but is that whole big scene at the end. I won't say what, but you know it if you've seen it. The on your left scene, let's say.
Yeah. Oh, love that. Yeah.
That I've always argued that is the most significant scene in cinema history. And people look at me weird when I say that, because you would think it would be something like Gone with the Wind or some shit, right? But it's not. That scene, I think that scene on your left is the most significant scene in cinema history. And people look at me like I'm crazy, but my argument is this. That is a scene that has all the weight of that scene is contingent on 20 something movies coming before it. 10, 11 years of moviegoers sitting in cinemas waiting for end credits, watching 2.5 hours of movies year after year after year, sometimes twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year. It is a catalog of work that extends back to the 60s, and there is no way anybody else in any other franchise in cinema can recreate that, because the storytelling won't allow it.
Sure.
Even Star Wars can't do that because the characters live and die in different timelines.
Yeah.
No one will ever be able to repeat that moment. And it has so much weight building up to it. And I was like, can anybody ever kind of hope to match that level of significance in terms of production and the thousands of people that were involved in the making of all those films? Because they all share a role in us losing our minds with that scene when it happens.
Yeah.
I think the end of No Time to Die, when Bond dies, when he stands on the top of the silo and watches the rockets rain down, that to me is the only thing I've been able to find that, I'm not saying it trumps or is better than or anything like that, but I think it equals the significance of that endgame scene, because the idea of Bond, the hero dying, happens in almost every franchise at some point, right? Yeah. When you think Batman is about to die in The Dark Knight Rises, spoilers. When you think he's about it there's no real weight to it, because they'll just reboot. We've only seen him for 3 movies, and it's powerful, no question, but it's 3 movies. This was 5 movies, but it was 50 to 60 years of cinema history leading up to this, because it was the death of a character that we believed to be immortal.
Yeah.
And he's still immortal because they'll reboot it, right? And it's a twist, let's say, that was so, and it's not really a twist because it's foreshadowed so much. It's even in the title, let's be honest. It's a twist that was so important to people that it was protected for so long. There are many people who still don't know what the ending of No Time to Die is. And there were weeks where like that plot, that ending still was protected.
Yeah.
And Mark Kermode on his review show on BBC Radio was talking about that. Was talking about if this was any other movie, that twist would have been exposed ages ago. You would have, like, people would have been talking about, don't spoil the ending, and everybody would have known, okay, he's obviously going to die, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was none of that. There was no conversation about it. It was like, did you see the movie? Okay, no, okay, fine, won't say anything, or there was very little chatter on social media about the significance of the film. It's a great movie or whatever, but there was never anything about it. And I thought that twist was important to people. And I think that and there is a weight to that movie that doesn't get enough recognition, I think.
For sure. I think what it boils down to in the end is that you take this, like you say, this character that's immortal and is, I think you could call him a comedic style of character. He's immortal, he's never going to die, he's always going to win, he's fine, and you flip it and suddenly he becomes tragic, and because he can't win, and whatever you think of the the kind of narrative backflips they have to do to make that a thing. Viruses and whatnot. It doesn't. I don't think it really matters, because ultimately it's the end game and the reason why he does that. And I think it speaks a lot to who that character is and who Craig's Bond is, because he's not giving his life in the end for Queen and country. He's not giving his life for all of these things. He's giving his life for the woman he loves and his daughter, because and in the knowledge that if he doesn't, he can't see them again. And and I think I think it sums up Daniel Craig's era in that humanizing moment, because A, he's mortal for starters, all of a sudden, and B, when he finally meets his maker and he comes to the end of it, it's because of something so human as it's not wife, actually, sorry, his kind of lover and his daughter.
And when we say mortal and immortal, we're obviously,
yeah,
I know we'll get crucified for this in the comments, so we're
Sure.
not talking about whether in the story he actually can't die. We're talking about Bond is a character that is always getting reset and rebooted and recast and is lived for 50 years in the minds of audiences. And most superhero characters, let's say, because Bond is almost superhero at this point, are immortal. Batman gets revisited and all that. When the new Batman comes out later in the year... Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to, just along the lines of clarification, to clarify what I mean by comedic and tragic characters. I don't mean everybody sat there laughing at Bond all the time and he's just so hilarious, even though he's a punny guy. I just mean that in the sense that a comedic character will always bounce back and they'll be all right in the end. And a tragic character not necessarily being one that is drab and sad and whatnot all the time. I mean in the sense that he cannot win. He cannot come back, and it's expected that he will not come back just for the sake.
And he will lose a bit of himself along the way, every time. It's I was going to say it'll be 10 years, almost 10 years, when the new Batman film comes out later this year with Robert Pattinson, from when the Dark Knight trilogy ended. I wouldn't have expected. I know we've had Ben Affleck's Batman, but that was more of a contributor to other films, let's say.
Absolutely.
I think Batman vs Superman was looked at as Man of Steel 2 by many people, and and so on and so forth. The reason why I mention that is because I don't think we're going to have to wait that long for a new Bond, because Bond, I know it just came out before Christmas, but this is a film that finished a while back. The pandemic put it on hold.
Yes.
And I don't think we're going to have to wait that long to get an announcement of who's going to be the next Bond.
Mm.
I don't think we'll have to wait that many years before we'll get a new movie. If I wager they probably have a few treatments already in store. Like, I imagine they wait until the film comes out because they want to gauge audience reaction. They want to see what people think. They want to let it breathe for a bit and then figure out what the next direction will be. But they must have some ideas already in the can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, for his death, I think it's also been foreshadowed in the Casino Royale. Remember on the table when he actually drank the martini, the spiked martini, and he almost died, and he said, "Just a little bit, I'm almost dead." So it's like some kind of an homage to that kind of line in this movie, and I think it's a very nice closure for the entire 5 movies and Daniel Craig era, as you said. And I think James Bond is just an image. He's not the person. There's so many 007 along the years, and you see them like Silva and different, but we never saw them as movies. We saw them now when they actually flip side and they become the villains. So, but killing Daniel, it's never been done before, like as a Bond being dead. I think they just want to humanize him much more, to say he's just a normal guy. He did his work, but his death never been in vain. It's actually for a very good purpose. And
It's
I
an
think
earned. It's an earned death.
yes, yes, exactly.
For sure.
Did you stay to the end of the credits and see James Bond will return? I did. I did. I was the only guy sitting in the cinema,
James Bond
and
will return.
they were cleaning the floors and everything, and I stayed right to the end because I knew it was going to come, because it's been 60 years of, or however long, of 60 years actually this year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of James Bond will return, and I wanted to see it, and it came up, and
were you relieved? Did you breathe a sigh of relief after?
no, because no, it wasn't relief. It was just I knew it was going to happen. I knew it was and that's not in a bad way. It's, I have such trust in Barbara Broccoli and Eon and the way they make these films now. I knew that they weren't spitting on me as a Bond fan by killing my favorite character, or one of my favorite characters. Sure. They were they're doing what they can do within the confines of the franchise they've created. It's their prerogative to kill this character because we can just reboot him. We'll get another actor to play him, as we have always done. So it's not a problem. It doesn't mean we've now stopped ourselves from telling certain stories, or it doesn't mean, oh God, how are they going to bring him back? Which is always contrived.
Yeah.
No, they haven't broken any rules. They haven't done any damage to the franchise by doing this. In fact, if anything, they've made audiences more respectful of the franchise, because now we don't know where this could go next.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to take this discussion now. Where does Bond go next? Because what kind of, without getting into like who's going to play Bond, what are we looking for out of a Bond character moving forward? And what, I don't know, what kind of ideas could you see them playing with, or could they play with? Like, what kind of potential does the franchise have? Any ideas?
I would say if it's for me, I would go a different perspective from Bond than being enlisted in the MI6 and all that. I will take someone who's really criminal and he's forced to play with the MI6. And with that, you are putting a really dangerous person to do government's work. And with that, you are hyping the risk and stakes. And also, it's interesting because you don't know how this character will act. You never have this, probably like when they enlist you, they already know all your background and what you like, and they did their research. But if you're a criminal and you've been in the hiding and you're doing so many things, it's like they are in the front of enigma. They don't know you, so that would actually raise a lot of questions and raise a lot of conflict with the new M and all that. So it's much more character driven as well, and studying that character.
It's almost like what Guy Ritchie did with The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I love Man from U.N.C.L.E. if you haven't seen that. No, I think your idea is much kind of taking it further. But
yes.
In Man from U.N.C.L.E., he is Henry Cavill's character is he was an art thief during the war. He fought for the Americans, I believe, and
yes.
he was an art thief. And his punishment is that he's now going to work for this intelligence service and pay off his debt instead of going to prison. I think an idea like that, going much darker, and going deeper into the world of that, and making this guy more ferocious or more unpredictable than that, could be very interesting, actually. M is his handler, not his boss. That could be cool. That could be cool. Marcus, where do you think?
I have agonized over this question because I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to think. I've been thinking about it for a long time, ever since I came out of the cinema, actually, and I started thinking, what would you do next? And I think, and I don't have a coherent answer yet. There are a number. I think that you have different options to consider. You either do you sit in the world that has been created around the Daniel Craig character? Do you stay in that universe? Do you sit with M? Do you sit with Q and Moneypenny and these people? And do you bring along the new 007? Do you follow her in that kind of story? Or do you do what we've always done and you recast Bond? Now, there's also a consideration in that we live in a world of cinematic universes now, right? So, and Bond obviously predates all of them. But do you try and make that a thing? I would say no, but there are suggestions of it. There was a brilliant video created by Corridor Digital. I don't know if either of you seen it, but they attempted to. It's very funny. It's very tongue in cheek, but they attempt to create a narrative over the years of Bond as a code name, and using visual effects and things like that. And they have Sean Connery rising from the grave on multiple occasions. It's very good. It's worth checking out. I don't think you can do that because the idea of Bond being a code name is kind of dead because of your Skyfall and your Blofeld brother situation. I don't think you can do that. So, and I don't think you can continue to explore the world without Bond in it because I just don't think it's right to do that. So then you land on recasting, and then you got to look at the wider world. What does it mean to be a kind of a British secret agent at this point in time? We're living in a post-Brexit, pandemic-ridden world. What is Bond in that? What kind of political intrigue can you get from a country that is perhaps not as big a player on the world stage as we once were? So, and would it be kind of depressing? Would it kind of be a bit depressing to explore that? Very interesting, I think, from a character perspective, and very interesting to kind of go down that route. But would it be kind of depressing to see Bond have his wings clipped a bit, and to maybe not be able to go and do all these things, and actually be almost potentially even laughed at by greater world powers and say, hang on a minute, what are you doing here? So then, and after some of the darker depths that we've been to with Craig's Bond and the very kind of intense analysis of what it means to be British in the post 2000, post millennium, then perhaps actually the thing to do, and there's rumors of this anyway, is to take it back in time, and so cast him in the 60s, and let's see Bond actually. So rather than trying to make Bond fit, because the legacy of James Bond with misogyny and with kind of the way that character looks at things that in 2022 we would disagree with. Why rather than trying to make this Cold War spy fit into this world, just put him back in his home and explore and use the kind of this that era of spycraft and Cold War and things like that as a way of exploring what we now live in as kind of this post-truth age, as you might call it. And look at what the meaning of truth is through the medium of the Cold War and through that kind of world. Or perhaps another thought that occurred, if you wanted to, is you do an old man Bond, and you bring back. And it's interesting you mentioned Timothy Dalton, because my thought process was, what if you bring back Timothy Dalton, and you see him as the old dog brought back into service, and you explore what it really is like to be Bond, because goodness knows Timothy Dalton has lost none of his gravitas, and so bring him back. Let's see what he does, or Pierce Brosnan. Possibly too soon for Pierce Brosnan, but thoughts along those lines would be the thing. So I don't really have anything firm. I think there's I think it's a very complicated question. I think it's a very difficult question to answer, but that's my 2 pence, I suppose.
I'm looking for, and while I'm talking, Marcus, you can find this out. Who plays Malfoy's father in Harry Potter?
Yeah. Jason Isaacs.
I'm on IMDb here, and I can't.
I believe, because he was also
Jason Isaacs. Yes, Jason Isaacs narrates the Bond novels, the original Bond novels on Audible, and he does a great job of it. Oh, really? And cool. I always thought he would be a phenomenal Bond. Now, he's obviously hit that age where he wouldn't be doing the Daniel Craig Casino Royale level stuff, but Old Man Bond, even if you couldn't get, not that Jason Isaacs is that old, but if you want to do the kind of the the older character, older than what action heroes tend to be, the age that action heroes tend to be. Although John Wick, Keanu Reeves is late 50s now, isn't he? I mean, very late 50s.
Yeah, very
So
true.
anyway, no, I think he's probably the same age as Daniel Craig as well. Maybe, I don't know.
Oh,
Probably,
he's
yeah,
52
probably.
now.
Because that's the thing, isn't it?
He's
Have
52.
we have?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Jason Isaacs,
It does-
58. So it says.
Yeah, so he's around the same age actually. Yeah, so I think Jason
Similar
Isaacs would be. Jason Isaacs is a really great actor. He's got enough credibility as the British kind of real British actor.
Sure.
He's built up enough of a reputation on a global stage. Like, where he's from, no question. You know where he's from. You know what flag he would be fighting for in a movie like this. And
he has a great darkness to him as well. This lovely kind of he played an ill-fated captain in the first series of Star Trek Discovery, and was so just dripping with this kind of charm but evilness. It's very cool. It's very cool.
I really love the idea of going back to the past, because I think you can also start challenging a lot of the outdated ideas that the original films would have played. I would love to see the Bond franchise go back to the past, revisit the stuff that didn't work about the previous movies, the more less enlightened approaches to storytelling and cultures and so on, and actually start cherry picking the best stuff from it and revealing it to us as like surprise moments or things like that. I'd love to see a whole movie that is in the Bahamas that's recreating the kind of the investigation of Thunderball, which is one of my favorite Bond films. I would love to see. We were talking about who could make a great Bond before, and Cillian Murphy's name came up, and I was thinking, would Cillian Murphy be better as a villain?
Maybe, yeah.
And I was thinking, Doctor No. He could be a really cool Dr. No. This idea of like this tall kind of, slender man who you could believe is, a world-renowned scientist, doesn't have a kind of a physical, intimidating kind of a, action presence. Let's say he's not going to, crush your skull like Dave Bautista in Skyfall could, but he is somebody who could be like Blofeld, pulling strings and manipulating the local community to do his bidding or something like that. And you could imagine he's the villain, and then maybe there's some nickname that he has, or maybe he's got a middle name or something that is a reference to No, something as simple as that. And now you've got cool, you're not giving us Dr. No, but you're just giving us a cool friendly reference to it. Or I think there's a lot of fun that they can have with that stuff, where they're revisiting the massive amount of content that they have from the past, but doing it in a way that's actually, I think, more, sustainable as an ongoing franchise.
Because you got to ask the question at this point as well. After such a terrific run of films with Daniel Craig in the modern era, where do you go? In terms of what more is there to actually be gained by exploring this time and in that way, and continuing that. And we've always had Bonds existing in the same time period that the films are made, and it's worked up to now. But we've just had. It's a hard break is killing off Bond. It's a hard break in the franchise. And it's not a soft recast and we're just going to carry on and do something else. It's a hard break, and I think it deserves a hard reset. And I think resetting it back to the 60s and exploring and, having that revisionist thing would be really interesting. I would also marry him off and have him trying to have the, your Hawkeye trying to protect the family and trying not to involve them in the thing. I think that'd be really interesting. The idea of a nuclear family in the 60s, and every now and again he's there and he's trying to mow the lawn. But then Cillian Murphy appears and he's like, Mr. Bond, I found your safe house, and he's like, oh no, please don't kill my wife and family. But we get to know them over a series of time, because the other thing I would do is plan it all in advance and have a trilogy of films and know exactly where we're going with each single one of them, and have one villain as well. So taking this thing that works so well with Daniel Craig's serialized storytelling and amping it up further. They're having a single villain and a single antagonist that goes through the entire thing and telling a self-contained story over 3, 4, 5 films, whatever it might be, and have real human stakes with, so literally learning the lessons from this run of Daniel Craig films and taking what worked and the humanization of the character and carrying that on and pushing it further in a very deliberate way, I think would be really interesting.
If we see all the 5 films, I think, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me. I think just the Casino Royale is based on the novel from Ian Fleming. Everything else is, it's actually screenwriters. So it's a new ideas, it's new treatment, it's a new story. The only reference to Ian Fleming is a character created by Ian Fleming. That's it. So you already have the specter of creating new worlds. For me, I would go post-apocalyptic. I'm always with the post-apocalyptic. I think John knows me more in that field. I like talking about 2050 and after World War III. So it's the after effect of the war and how we actually can shape new countries and have maybe we bring Britain much more stronger than now in terms of what you're talking about, the pretext and all that. So I think that will help actually amp up the state of the UK or Britain in general, and how the franchise will survive as well. But we will see him in a different perspective. Maybe if we were going to see him in an old guy, it will be much more like Logan. We see him, baby. Yeah, I think that will be a great way to do it. And he actually hands off the new Bond, which is going to be, if we're going to stay for 4 or 5 films, this new Bond will be maybe his son, or maybe even a kid he actually adapted, and this kid already have different problems in the past. So we will actually escalate these issues with them.
I think the idea of
old man Bond, man, that's that's so interesting. I'd watch that film. I would watch that film, post-apocalyptic old man Bond.
Yeah, like Logan, and how he actually gave the the flag to his daughter, X-23, and then she becomes this new. Yeah,
I think if you were to say post World War III or anything like that, I think that would be too much for an audience to swallow. But the idea that a Bond villain actually managed to pull off their plan. Yes. Because that's what every Bond movie is trying to do. Every Bond villain has a world domination plot. Most of them anyway, right?
Yes.
And they all have this, I'm going to detonate this bomb, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. Imagine a world where maybe it's not like post-apocalyptic, but the idea that London was, or maybe part of the UK was destroyed in an attack, or part of Europe was destroyed in an attack 10 years ago or 5 years ago, because somebody actually succeeded in their job, and we're coming on the other side of it, rather than it being Bond trying to rather than being Bond trying to stop the guy, it's now Bond needs to avenge everybody, but they kind of toyed with that a little bit in one of the Mission Impossible films recently, where a scientist who had I don't know, he's like a nuclear scientist, whatever, and he's like a terrorist, and he wakes up in a hospital and he sees a news report, and it's like a fake news report on TV that says like that a nuclear weapon blew up in London or New York or somewhere, and he's like, oh my god, we did it, ha ha ha, and he has no problem talking to Tom Cruise then, because so they faked this devastation in order to get the guy to talk, and it's kind of a bit contrived but a bit funny, a bit cool as well at the same time. But I remember watching that at the time, thinking, for a few minutes that this was legitimate, that this was real, and thinking, holy crap, we're actually coming in at the other side of this. Now, he's actually failed to stop the bad guy, and now we're having to pick up the pieces. I think there's definitely room to do something like that. Even if you wanted to continue with the characters from No Time to Die, the idea that who's to say that the gas, like, somebody didn't get some of the gas files out, or who's to say that something. There wasn't a contingency plan. It might, again, it's very contrived to get to that point, but Bond is loaded with those kind of contrivances in order to, in order to exist in the first place. So I think we'd swallow the pill,
Oh, 100%. Well, I was going to say that there's kind of there's talk of Amazon acquisition and things like that coming on the horizon for Bond and things like that, and the kind of the quiet sentiment. I guess this is a direct question for you, really, John, as the Bond connoisseur. How would you feel about a spin-off Bond TV series?
I really wouldn't like it.
I knew you were going to say that.
The only reason is you could give me a spin-off series of a lot of things. I'm one of those people who doesn't really believe every film has to be watched in a movie theater. Okay, I was glad that they waited with Bond.
Yeah,
and I'm glad I saw it in the movie theater. Bond is the Bond universe works because we never get too deep into it. We get one movie every few years. It's always very structurally familiar. It's really just about stopping this plot, whatever. If you do a TV show, if you do any sort of expansion of that, where we're hanging out in the world way longer than we should be, my worry is that you start to see the world in a way that stops being cinematic. And the thing that I would hate to see is that a Bond film would start to feel like a Christmas special episode of television.
Yeah, I get
right?
that. I get that.
Yes.
When you go to see, like, I'm a big Downton Abbey fan. I cannot shake the televisual qualities of the Downton Abbey movie when I watch it. And there's a new one coming out soon. I'll be watching that. And I know it's going to feel like an episode of television up on the big screen. Yeah. We saw The Many Saints of Newark recently, the Sopranos movie. We did a video about that. And it felt very much like this was television on the big screen. I think the deeper you move into the world of television, the more the DNA of what those movies and what those stories get changed, the more they get changed. And that would be my fear. There's a James Bond video game coming out from the guys who did Hitman, IO Interactive, and that's going to be I think that'll be really great. They've partnered with Eon. I think that'll be a really cool next step for the franchise. I don't believe that Bezos and Amazon are going to have any real say over MGM. There's a great interview with Barbara Broccoli somewhere. I'll find it and put it in the description.
Yeah.
And it's she talks about, you know, her start in the industry, and she talks about the role of you know, women in the industry and everything. And it's a really, really great interview of somebody who is just been a mainstay in Hollywood far more than most have ever survived, you know, in the industry. And she says, she has this quote from her father, which is she's quoting her father, who says, "Don't make long-term decisions." I'm paraphrasing here, it's not very good. It's like, don't make permanent creative decisions because of people who are in temporary jobs. It's something like that. I'm really butchering the quote, but it's that idea of studio executives come and go, movie studios come and go, but we're here to stay.
Yeah.
You know, don't let somebody who's only in a temporary job, because studio executives come and go, don't let somebody in a temporary job tamper with something that is a permanent stay in cinema.
Yes.
And I love that idea.
Wise
and
words,
I genuinely believe there is nobody out there who's going to push Barbara Broccoli into making something that she doesn't want to make. If you look at the Matrix Resurrections, we talked about that. Yeah. There's that line in it where the guy says, "Well, look, somebody else is going to make this game, whether you want it or not. We might as well make it instead." I don't believe anybody's ever going to do that with Barbara Broccoli. And I think if there's any franchise that's safe, it's Bond.
Yes.
Whether they do it in a good way is another question, but I don't think any of them have a say in it. And also, I think Bond, sorry, just to finish, I think Bond it makes up such a huge component of the MGM kind of, let's say, I don't know, money-making machine, that it's like they're basically a massive shareholder in the company to begin with.
Yeah,
Whether
for
they
sure.
whether they are or not, they might as well be at this point.
Mm.
So sorry, Asim,
I
you were
mean,
going to
I
say.
mean, I mean, the beauty of Bond is watching it in the cinemas. It's not watching on TV because you are getting just a little taste in every movie, and that's the beauty of it. Because if we got too deep, we lose that essence of Bond. We lose that curiosity of, okay, what's going to happen, and we're waiting for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years now just for the next movie. And when you see this movie, you get, oh my god, this is worth waiting for. But if you saw it on TV, it's going to be like anything else right now, and it's more about quantity, not quality, and it's going to affect even the franchise in general.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And television is like an open world video game.
Yeah.
Open world is great in some games. For other games, it can be a death sentence because you've now exposed us to corners of this world that we probably should never have seen, because now you've weakened the story, or you've weakened the characters, or you've opened up threads that we start pulling on, and it just well, it's well, why did that happen then if this is a thing that happens in this world? So I think I could see there being pressure. I could see there being huge pressure. If we're getting a Lord of the Rings TV show from Amazon, I could imagine huge pressure from Amazon to say to Eon, we want a Bond series, or we want that character from that movie to get their own series, or whatever. But I think Barbara Broccoli has been getting that pitch her entire career from every studio executive that's come and gone. I think every studio executive that's come into MGM has said, how can I make money quick? Bond. Let's talk with the Bond producers. What are they working on? Let's get Halle Berry her own movie. That was the big thing after Die Another Day. Let's give Halle Berry her own movie. There's no way. I think they'll go beyond that. I'm surprised we're getting a video game. Frankly, I can't wait for it, but I'm surprised we're getting that.
Well, the legacy of Bond video games is great though. I mean, GoldenEye on the thing is such a solid game. So I suppose maybe that.
And you know what? We need to acknowledge that when we're talking, if the point here is to talk about pitching the next direction of Bond, we need to acknowledge games as a legitimate cornerstone of that, because the games industry is huge. I feel silly just saying that. It's massive, right?
Yeah. Yes.
There are so many franchises that are getting some of their best work now through games. And there are some games franchises that make more money than Marvel movies sometimes. There is nothing wrong with Eon Productions saying, let's pull back on movies for 10 years and let's explore games, and let's see, can we do a trilogy of games that tell a great Bond story that allows us to get some great A-list actors in, to do motion capture and voiceover and all that, where we can get a great Oscar-winning music composer in, as many games do, where we can just really expertly tell the kind of stories that we might not want to tell on the big screen.
Yeah.
And we could do maybe the far out futuristic stuff, or we could do we could revisit the past in case they're worried about that maybe alienating audiences or something. I don't know. It can be a real experimental playground.
Experimental, yes.
Yeah. Even though I don't think the games industry should be looked as that. It is looked at that by, I think, many studios who see games as like, well, let's just tease that idea out there rather than actually like committing to it. But this is one of those plays. I think Bond could do that really well.
I think Bond is a divisive property, in so many ways. People love it and people loathe it, kind of in equal measure. I don't know if people loathe Bond, but they can be quite apathetic towards it, and so I think it's one of those things where you're gonna annoy someone, you're gonna lose some audience some way or another. The question is, do you try and getting into proper studio politics on that, but do you try and push forward, maintain the fan base that you already have, or do you try and bring in new fans to it? And of course the golden answer is you do both, but but that's often so difficult to do. So I think the idea of producing a really, really interesting Bond video game, I mean, why the hell not? You know, it's an exciting future for industries and for all kinds of things. And if Bond is going to find its place in, because that's the question, isn't it? You know, what's next for Bond? What is Bond in this world now? Well, let's try that. See if that sticks. And if it doesn't stick, you know what? We can go back to films. And so yeah, I'm all for it. Sounds great. I'll
It's
buy.
like when you see Batman Arkham Asylum,
Yeah,
a lot of the elements right now, it's been used in the new Batman. And a
100%.
lot of the creativity, the kind of storyline, the kind of tone, the kind of where they're going, trying to go with the new story, with the new Batman, it's actually based on the Arkham Asylum. A lot of it is just a hint to that kind of video game, but it made a huge impact on the video game world, and also investment. As an investment, it's actually profitable.
I'd love to be able to say that my favorite Bond story is a video game.
Yeah.
That would be such an amazing thing. My favorite Alien, I love the Alien franchise. My favorite Alien story is Alien Isolation, the video game. It's the best Alien movie that never got made, you know? I'd love to be able to say that. Yeah, I just think it's funny, just you say, Marcus, about how, you know, people are always going to be annoyed and stuff like that, right? The biggest criticism I've heard from people over the last few years over the last 10 years with the, you know, since Skyfall was,
Yeah.
oh, they're trying to humanize Bond. They're trying to give him a backstory. They're trying to, you know, I don't care about that. I just want a great Bond movie. And I remember thinking, wow, that's so funny you say that, because on the one hand, the critics rave when Bond tries to get deep, when Bond tries to get, you know, to live up to other movies and the kind of stuff we get from other movies. And on the flip side, you've got other people then saying they don't want that. So you can't lose with Bond, really, can you, moving forward? Because
100%.
the critics are going to love you, or the fans are going to love you, or the non-fans are going to love you. Like it's funny.
There's a market for you somewhere.
They're not complaining because they didn't do something. They're complaining because they did do something.
Yeah.
And you're going to get all of everything you want in those movies anyway. There might be something you don't want in it, but that's better than a movie failing to give anything at all, which some movies are guilty of. And so I think the future is very bright, I think, for this franchise now more than ever. And I think killing Bond raised the biggest active question that the industry has had for a long time, which is, where do you go next? And that's, I mean, that's the point of this video, is trying to tease out some ideas, and it's the thing that audiences are going to just flock to the cinema for. I think the next Bond film, whatever it is going to be a box office record breaker.
I think you're right.
You know, and it is amazing that 60-something year, potentially 65 years later, Bond is still doing that.
Exactly. And it's going to be a very hard kind of time for the new recruit as James Bond. What happened to Daniel Craig. You know, everyone just didn't like him, didn't see that he's fit. Because they're comparing him to, you know, Brosnan and also Sean Connery, and all of them are different Bonds. You know, they're handsome, they're tall, they're elegant and everything, but this guy's different. He's a different cloth. You know, he's been cut from a different cloth. So they never saw what's going to happen in these new films. And I think the same thing will happen with the new cast. And I'm thinking like Tom Hardy or Hugh Jackman would be somewhat not the new, or let's say a very fresh start to Bond. Maybe he's been an experienced one, but not in the MI6. Maybe like what I said, maybe an ex-criminal who's been the MI6 trying to catch for a long time, and you know, now they got him and they are forcing him to work with them.
I think you are right. Whoever steps into this role has their work cut out for him. But I also think the industry has taken a lot of steps forward in surprising casting over the years.
Yes,
you know, we had Heath Ledger as the Joker. We've got Robert Pattinson as Batman now. I think each of those announcements at the time raised eyebrows and said, really, that person as, you know, and then you see them and you think, okay, I'm in, you know. I think, Daniel Craig as well. I think there's we're going to be very. I think before we would have been very like, no, that's not going to happen. I think now people are going to be like, okay, show me what
They're
you've got.
accepting,
Show me what you've
accepting
got.
more. Yeah.
Sorry,
If
Marcus.
you
I think,
if you want to look closer to home and for precedent, there are two franchises that I'm aware of, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there are two franchises that make a point of regularly changing their lead character, and both of them are about the same age in years old. One of them is Bond, and the other one is Doctor Who. And very recently, Doctor Who recast its main character as a woman for the first time. And so you can look in a lot of ways to that franchise, and that's Doctor Who is one. You're the Bond expert. I'm very much the same with Doctor Who, and you can look at that, and you can look at the reaction and the backlash and the praise in equal measure to Jodie Whittaker's casting and subsequent kind of acceptance into the role. And you can apply that to the future of Bond, and you can look at it to the difference being, of course, that the role of the Doctor and the regular recasting of the role of the Doctor is something that's written very much into the fabric of the show in world, and it's canonical, and it's there are narrative reasons for it, whereas Bond has never needed to do that, never has done that. So there are differences, but I think that you can kind of do a temperature check using that show and using that to see where we are with it. And also it'd be very interesting because the Amazon acquisition of looking towards MGM and Bond and things like that. The BBC are outsourcing the new production of Doctor Who to a company called Bad Wolf, which have made shows like His Dark Materials, things like that. And they are currently being looked at by Amazon. So we're going to get into the situation where you can see there may be some overlap. I don't know exactly what point I'm making here, but I think that there are similarities there, and I think it will be interesting to see where we go.
You mentioned female casting. This has obviously been a talking point for many, many years.
Yeah.
I am all in favor of taking Lashana Lynch's Nomi from No Time to Die, making her the face of this franchise moving forward. Mm-hmm. You can call it you can make it the 007 franchise now.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the James Bond franchise. As we've already established, they did an amazing job with Daniel Craig. There's been plenty of James Bond movies. I think that franchise has now evolved with the last movie into a 007 franchise rather than a James Bond franchise. And I wouldn't have been big on the idea of just kind of writing the Bond character, whatever that looks like, out of the movies, and just replacing it with another lead, until I saw Lashana Lynch in this film, and I thought,
yeah,
I could watch you in a whole 2-hour movie of your own, no problem. She has enough. She grabs your attention enough. She's got enough great characteristics and great traits in that film. She's definitely equal to Daniel Craig in Casino Royale, if you want to talk about like kind of new people stepping into the role. Kind of, she's done a great job with that. I'd be more than happy to see that, but I wouldn't like to see the character of Bond itself being changed too much. If you're keeping James Bond, as strange as this sounds, I want to see the misogynistic asshole getting his comeuppance. Like, I want to see Barbara Broccoli, and I want to see the filmmakers challenging that idea, because it's not a cool idea. I want to see them challenging that idea. But I like the idea that that's his flaw as a character, because character flaws are important, and I think we in an attempt to make characters more acceptable and more in line with the kind of characters that we might write now. I think sometimes character flaws can get written out.
Yeah.
And if Bond as a character is staying in, I would like to see some of those character traits stay. But I want to see the characters like Nomi and Moneypenny and Q and so on challenging that behavior, so that it's not just glamorized like it was in older films. but that is the character of Bond. And are we, what, so I think I'm totally in favor of exploring other characters and making a clear step that we are now building on the legacy of James Bond with a new character. It's 007. What can this bring? In the same way that what can Daniel Craig bring to James Bond, what can Lashana Lynch bring to 007?
Yeah.
And I think that could be a very healthy approach that keeps us with Ralph Fiennes and all the great characters from that previous movie, and allows you to build on, allows you to reference Blofeld, and allows you to reference Spectre and all those other things that would have
all
happened.
That narrative work they did, all of that stuff that they did, all that world that they've spent the last 15 years building. There's so much there. No, I agree.
And I'd like to see Madeline Swan back. I really love Léa Seydoux, and I would love to see her character play more roles in the future, whatever that looks like. I love the idea that she was an analyst for a villain, like that she would would give therapy sessions to a villain. And I love the idea that you could bring in a psychologist's point of view to a villain's behavior.
Yeah.
Because those villains tend to be twirling mustache kind of guys, don't they, sometimes?
Yeah.
Can I also say it's time for a female villain?
Yes.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Way
100%.
And we're way past that. Like, we need that. Like,
if you want to stick with James Bond as your main protagonist as well, and you want to go down that route, then, and you want to challenge misogyny, then what better possible way could you have doing it than introducing a female villain who, whether connected to Bond in the past or not, might be interesting if she was, but you don't necessarily have to. Could be a bit convoluted. What a cool way of doing that. What an interesting way of forcing Bond to challenge himself.
I think, to be honest, I think Safin should have been was the window for that. The idea of the man coming into Madeline Swan's house when she was a child and killing the mother, and then I think she falls into the ice as a young woman, and I think the fact as well that this person was wearing a mask, you would assume it must be a guy, it must be a man, right? And actually take off the mask and reveal it's actually a young woman who's lost her family, and it's this, I don't know, rather than just being it's a guy pursuing women through the woods or whatever, which I think is just and the idea as well of a woman who could potentially be a mother in her own right,
still
threatening the life of a child, of a little girl, no less. There's just there's so much interesting stuff that it could happen. I'm kind of talking myself out of No Time to Die now, aren't I? But I think the conversation of a female villain definitely needs to. I think I'll be disappointed if I don't see that moving forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
And also, last point I would make: we need more diversity in terms of the world that they go to. It needs to be like, I would like to see some references to the Middle East. I would like to see references to parts of Asia that aren't just being used because it's a beautiful set piece. Like, that's actually, like, there's an important part of that culture or of that maybe the economic aspects of that world, of that part of the world, coming into play in the story in some way. It always just seems to be, well, Bond's just hanging out in the Bahamas, or Bond is getting wasted in Cuba or something like that. It's all that tends to be, and as much as I love seeing Italy on the big screen, I live in Italy, I would love to see more of Europe than Italy. I think that's something the Bourne movies did quite well. They traveled Europe quite well. It would be nice if Bond, and don't get me wrong, I love those locations, but we've done them too much.
Yeah. The one last thing from me, because I know we're over time, I just need Ana de Armas' character back in my life all the time, because she's so great. She's just so great in that role. She's so brilliant. She steals the whole thing. Paloma, that's it. Thank you. That sequence, that scene is so energetic. It's so brilliantly directed in terms of action.
She's so funny.
She's so funny, and all of the time. I just need her to come and hang out with me in that role, and if failing that, then more of her.
I genuinely think the new Bond movie, the more I've talked about this now with you guys, I feel like the new Bond film needs to be Lashana Lynch having to pull some allies together, and they don't know who I am because I'm new. I haven't built the portfolio of contacts and trustworthy relationships and networks that that my predecessors would have. But maybe I can use Bond as a connection. I can go and find Paloma. I can go and find a person who worked for Felix. I can find, if you trust Bond, can you trust me because he trusted me too?
Yeah.
Or something like that. And it's almost like that kind of dichotomy of needing Bond but wanting to step out of his shadow as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a great movie there.
That's a great idea. Oh,
sorry, I know self-praise is no praise. I know. Sorry.
It's like if you say Bond, then it's like a calling card. Like this is the card of trust. So I like how you reference the name, that it will bring you a lot of connections, a lot of open doors. It's like you have the magical card. Like you're having open sesame.
But there's there's the resentment because it's like I don't want to have to use this card.
Yes, exactly. So it's a double-edged sword. You use it when it's needed. You just be careful when to use it.
And then No Time to Die doesn't become the end of the Daniel Craig universe. It becomes
the start of another story.
The start of the next chapter of an ongoing series that has been, for the most part, doing it quite right, I think.
Yes.
Guys, I think we're going to have to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for this. This is a really great conversation. And thanks for listening, for those of you listening. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily videos. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for The Script Department on all major podcasting platforms. We'll be back tomorrow with another video. And until then, thanks Asim, thanks Marcus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening.
Take care, everyone.